NHL regular season recap, night 78 and 79. Happy New Year to everybody, and man, oh man, does it feel good to be back home. We're getting things started with the New Year's Eve matchups. First one between the Jets and Wild, the second half of a home-and-home between these two teams. And the Jets get things done once again, despite not having Connor Hellebuyck in net. Laurent Brossoit with a very good game, stopping 24-26. Fleury also pretty good for Minnesota, going 26 for 29. The goal scorers, Foligno in the first, Lowry in the second, and then Gaudreau, Nemesnikov, and Dom Toninato with his first of the year. Ends up being the game winner for Winnipeg. Another solid effort from them. They continue to be red hot as of late. Arguably one of the best teams, if not the best team in the NHL over the month of December. The Bruins taking on the Detroit Red Wings in what was a pretty entertaining and back-and-forth game, including the usual Jack Edwards blow-up. Goals came in twos in this game. So the first, with just a minute to play, Trent Frederick scored the first for the Bruins. He then got his second about 4 minutes into the second period. After that, it's Jake Wallman and Ben Sherratt scoring for the Wings to tie us at 2 headed to the third, where the Bruins would get their next 2 goals from Charlie Coyle and then Jake DeBrusk with an empty netter with about 2 minutes to play. JT Compher would come back and score one more to make it a 1-goal game once again before Pavel Zacha with the second empty netter of the game for the Bruins. It's a 5-3 final. Swayman was pretty solid, stopping 27 of 30 as usual, but Lyon with not the best night, stopping 19 of 22. Didn't see a ton of quantity, neither did, Jeremy Swayman, but nonetheless, it's a pretty solid game for both teams, but the Bruins come out the better of the two, a 5-3 victory. The Sabres taking on the Sens in a battle of 2 underperforming Atlantic Division teams, and the Sens end up getting the W in this one in a pretty big way. It's a 5-1 final, but Buffalo deserved a much better outcome. Devin Levi was not great in this one, while Anton Forsberg was unbelievable. He stopped 45 of 46, while Levi stops just 26 of 30. Buffalo outshoots Ottawa 18-5 and then 16-8 in the second and third period, respectively, and outshoot them overall 46-31, but just not quite enough for the win. Goal scorers in this one, Chychrun, McEwen, and Thompson all in the first. In the second, it's Kubalik and Kastelik. And then in the third, Artem Zub with the empty netter with just under 5 minutes to play. Pretty good win from the Sens. They obviously need a lot more of this if they want to make the playoffs, but it's a big win over their closest competition in the Atlantic. The Islanders taking on the Pittsburgh Penguins once again, and the Pens get the better of them for the second consecutive game, not thanks to 7 goals this time, but instead thanks to Alex Nedeljkovic, who stops 37 of 38. Ilya Sorokin also very good in this one, stopping 35 of 37, both goalies well above a .930 save percentage. This is the true definition of a goalie duel, but Nedeljkovic is the better of the two tonight. In the first period, it's Lars Eller, who also tacked on the empty netter to close out the game. In the second, Noel Acciari with just his third of the year, and then with about 6 minutes to play in the third, Sam Bolduc with his first did make it a 2-1 game, which tightened things up, of course, the last few minutes, but just not quite enough from the Islanders to get the W here. It's a big win for the Penguins, who, despite remaining in 7th in the Metro, have been slowly improving. They go to 18-13-4, while the Islanders fall to 17-10-9. The Lightning taking on the Montreal Canadiens, and the Lightning win this one by a final score of 4-3. Goals for them from Point, Watson, DeHaan, and Kucherov, but that's not really the story from this game. The story comes from the Jonathan Kovacevic goal in the first period, where pretty much everyone on the ice stopped playing, including the linesmen. The people running the lights in the arena started flashing the strobe lights. The music came on, and no whistle from Kelly Sutherland, who was on the bands in this one. They shoot it from about 200 feet down the rink and score, and it counts, and there's nothing they can do about it. Thankfully, this didn't really affect the outcome of the game, but a weird instance that benefited Montreal for whatever that's worth. But nonetheless, a 4-3 victory for the Lightning. They didn't necessarily deserve to get the win here. They got outshot, relatively reasonably by the Canadiens, 30-20, but nonetheless, Montembeault, with not his best night, makes it a 4-3 final for the Bolts. The Flyers visiting Calgary, and this one was actually a pretty uneventful game until the third period. Just 1 goal for each team in each period. So in the first, it's Ristolainen. In the second, it's Michael Backlund. We're 1-1 headed to the third, where it's a mess. Dennis Gilbert, Nazem Kadri, Bobby Brink, Blake Coleman, Igor Zamula all score. It's a 5-goal third period and a 4-3 final in favor of Calgary. Bunch of solid nights here. Huberdeau finally gets back on the score sheet. Andrew Mangiapane with 3 points. Blake Coleman with a goal and an assist. Jacob Markstrom pretty solid in this one, as was Sam Ersson. It's a pretty entertaining game, at least in the third, which is what I watched, so ended up working out well for me. Nonetheless, a much-needed win for Calgary, who's been slumping a little bit as of late. They needed to get back on the right side of the win column, and they do just that against a pretty strong Philadelphia team. the Edmonton Oilers taking on the Anaheim Ducks, and I think the most surprising part of this game was not that the Oilers won 7-2, but that they did so without one of McDavid or Draisaitl leading the way in points. That award tonight goes to Warren Foegele, who had 2 goals and 3 assists, a +4, 15 minutes of time on ice. He was outstanding in this one. Ryan McLeod also very good with a goal and an assist of his own. The other goal scorers here, Kane, Draisaitl, Hyman, and Brett Kulak, all getting one for themselves. McDavid did have a point. Draisaitl had 2 assists on top of his 1 goal. Calvin Pickard was pretty solid, stopping 28 of 30. While, of course, John Gibson, not his best night, just 32 of 39. Ouch. Yeah, not really a surprising outcome whatsoever. Max Jones and Frank Vatrano with the 2 goals for the Ducks. It's a 7-2 final in favor of Edmonton. Similar story in this next game between Dallas and Chicago, which is, I guess, a bit surprising that it got blown up this badly because their game on Saturday night was pretty tight. It's an 8-1 final in favor of Dallas. Scott Wedgwood faces just 24 shots, stops 23 of them. Peter Mrazek, who was very good the other night, gives up 6 on 31, but it's not the usual Hentzes, Robertsons, Heiskanens that are lighting up the score sheet. It's Mason Marchment and Tyler Seguin. Seguin with a goal and 2 assists. Mason Marchment with 3 goals and an assist for himself. Just a dominant performance on the score sheet from Dallas. They also outshoot them 41-24, so a pretty big performance, which, again, you'd expect between these two teams, one being a cup contender, the other one being in the conversation for Macklin Celebrini. So not a super surprising 8-1 result, but 8-1 is still pretty funny to look at nonetheless. That's exactly the way it was tonight between Dallas and Chicago. And the final game from New Year's Eve, one that also could have gotten pretty ugly if it weren't thanks to Kaapo Kähkönen, was the Sharks taking on the Avalanche. This one only ended up being a 3-1 final. Only 2 of those goals got past Kähkönen. The third was an empty netter. In the first, it's Mikko Rantanen with his 19th. In the second, Hurdle ties it on the power play with his 13th. Nichushkin extends the lead to 1 in the third with about 3.5 minutes to play. And then Josh Manson buries the empty netter with just about a minute to play, making that 3-1 final. Kähkönen, again, very, very good in this one. Georgiev only faced 11 shots. He still has a fine save percentage because he just gives up the 1, but the Avs were all over it in this game. The Sharks really never stood a chance. They got 3 shots in the first, 6 in the second, and just 2 while trailing, at least at the end of the third. So that was it for the New Year's Eve games, but of course, we have the Winter Classic on Monday. After wrapping up night 78, we have the Winter Classic as the lone game today, and it was a surprising-ish result for the Seattle Kraken. They win this one by a final score of 3-0. The first, second, and third star should go to Joey Daccord. He stops all 35 Kraken shots. He was phenomenal. These games can be really tough. As a goalie, you're dealing with the elements, the wind, the glare from the ice, different sight lines and stuff. It's really, really tough on the goalies, but he does a phenomenal job in this one, again, stopping 35 of 35. The goal scorers for Seattle, Eeli Tolvanen from Larson and Dunn in the first, Will Borgen with a rocket in the second from Cartier and Tolvanen, and then in the third, it is Yanni Gourde unassisted to make it that 3-0 final. Bit of a disappointing result for Vegas. It's kind of uneventful when you don't score a single goal in the Winter Classic, but for Seattle, it's a really good result. They continue to climb this Pacific Division ladder. They've been really good over the month of December in general, but especially their last 8 or so games. I think they're 6-0-2 or 5-0-3, something like that. Is a very, very good record for them. So that was it for the Winter Classic and it for night 79. We will talk to you guys tomorrow. I think we have a decent handful of games on Tuesday. Hope you had a safe and happy new year. We'll talk to you then.